Hey, mama, if you're running on coffee, feeling foggy, exhausted, and already overwhelmed before the day even starts, you're not alone. So many moms are doing all the right things for their health and still feel tired, frustrated, and confused by all the noise out there. Hi, I'm Jerusha, holistic wellness coach, wife, and mom, and I've been there. I spent years in survival mode, relying on caffeine and willpower, wondering what was wrong with my body. Until God showed me something that changed everything. A woman's body isn't broken, it's beautifully designed to thrive. This is where we ditch the world's way of health, cut through the noise, and bust the myths that have kept women stuck and exhausted. Together, we'll uncover simple, life giving truths about women's health the way God designed it, so you can find clarity, hope, real energy, and confidence for motherhood and the calling God's placed on your life. If you're ready to rise into the health you were created for, you're in the right place. It all starts right now. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, or even joking, thanks a lot, Eve? Like somehow, because of that moment in the garden, this is just what it means to be a woman now. Painful periods, hormonal swings, exhaustion, struggling through pregnancies, and feeling like your body is constantly working against you. And we laugh it off as we blame Eve. But underneath that laughter is a quiet belief. This is just part of being a woman. But let me ask you something. Where did we learn that? Did God actually say that? Or did we start believing something that we never stopped to question? Because if you go back to Genesis 3:16, this is what God says. I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. Childbearing. Not painful periods, not lifelong hormonal dysfunction, not constant fatigue. So here's the question I want you to really sit with. What if we've been blaming Eve for things God never actually said? Let's think this through. If painful periods, hormonal chaos, and constant struggle were simply part of the curse, wouldn't we expect to see that everywhere? Across cultures, across time, across environments? Wouldn't it be consistent in the story of womanhood? But it's not. And here's where we need to stay grounded and honest. We can't know exactly what Eve experienced. We can't know exactly what Sarah or Rebecca or the women of the Bible experienced in their bodies. Scripture doesn't give us that level of detail, but we do get glimpses. We know that Adam lived to be 930 years old, and Eve lived alongside him in that same span of life, which means her body sustained life over generations. She had no birth control, no modern interventions, no medical support systems as we know them. And we don't even know how many children she had. But we do know this: her body was capable of sustaining life for hundreds of years. And we see this pattern continue. We see women like Rebecca, who experienced a season of infertility, but still conceived, carried, and gave birth. We see Sarah, who conceived in what we would consider an impossible season of life. We see Rachel, who also struggled to conceive for a time, but still bore children. And then there's one of the most striking descriptions. In Exodus 1:19, the Hebrew women are described as vigorous, giving birth before the midwives arrive. Just sit with that for a second. Not perfect, not without challenge, but very different from what many women experience today. So while we can't know every detail, we can see a pattern, and we can compare that to what we see in the world today. Let's take a look at a different picture of the female body. There are multiple traditional living groups that researchers have studied for years. Groups like the Hadza, one of the last remaining hunter gatherer groups in Tanzania, the Chimane, an indigenous group in the Bolivian Amazon who live by farming, fishing, and living off the land, and the Juwansi, a traditional hunter gatherer group in southern Africa. Different places, different cultures, different environments, but similar patterns. And I want you to catch this because this is where it becomes hard to ignore. These women are not living in the same climate. They're not eating the exact same foods, and they do not share the same culture or traditions. And yet, we see the same patterns in their health. That's not coincidence, that's design. First, let's talk about the Chimane mother. Researchers studying the Chimane observed something that feels almost unbelievable to many modern women. A woman gives birth, and within a short period of time, sometimes within days, she is back to moving with her community. Carrying her baby, walking, working, life is normal. I want you to really picture that because for many women listening, those early postpartum days feel like survival mode. You're sore, you're exhausted, you're trying to figure out how to even sit comfortably. This isn't because she doesn't need to rest. It's because her body has been prepared for years. She has strong hips from daily squatting, a strong core from carrying, and endurance from constant movement. So when birth happens, her body isn't shocked by the demand. It's ready. It's not painless, but it's supported. Now, this is important to note because I don't believe that every woman should just be able to bounce right back after birth no matter what. There are actually cultures, including some Asian cultures, that believe in a full 40 days of rest for the mother. And the women in her community will actually come around her to support her. They cook for her, they watch her kids for her, they make sure that she stays in bed with that baby and rests, and she rests well. And I think that there's something so beautiful and so intentional about that. But there's also a difference between I can get up, but I choose not to, versus literally feeling like your body is honestly kind of wrecked from birth. And we see other cultures who live lives that, yes, is physically demanding on them, but they can also handle physical demands in a way that we just don't experience in modern culture. Now, let's take a look at the Hadza woman. These women walk miles every day, even during pregnancy. They gather food, they dig, they carry children. Their bodies are consistently lean, strong, and metabolically healthy. And obesity, something incredibly common in modern culture, is very rare for their community. Now, let's connect that for a second because this is where it becomes real for us. Excess body fat is directly tied to estrogen imbalance, insulin sensitivity, disrupted ovulation, PCOS, and fertility struggles. So, when we see women living in a way that naturally protects against that, we're not just seeing a different lifestyle, we're seeing a completely different hormonal experience. Across these populations, there's another pattern. Modern women experience over 400 menstrual cycles in a lifetime. But in traditional communities, that number is closer to around 100 because their lives include pregnancy, extended breastfeeding, and natural spacing, which means their bodies are not constantly cycling. And when you think about that, it challenges something we've normalized without questioning. I mean, they have 75% less cycles than the typical modern woman. I mean, good grief, could you imagine skipping that many cycles in your life? Like, yes, please. Sign me up for that, right? And there are actually protective measures to that as well. So the question becomes what has changed over time? Because now we're seeing a pattern across multiple groups, across multiple environments. I mean, this isn't isolated, this is consistent. So, if that's what traditional groups are experiencing, let's talk about the world our hormones are living in. We are living in an environment our bodies were never designed for. I mean, just think about it: plastics, skincare, cleaning products, pesticides, synthetic hormones are everywhere. The Endocrine Society has shown that endocrine disrupting chemicals interfere with hormone function. And so here's what that actually looks like in your body. They can mimic estrogen, creating imbalance. They can block hormone receptors so your body's signals don't land. They can disrupt ovulation, affecting your cycle. They can impact thyroid function, slowing metabolism and energy. And they can increase inflammation, which contributes to pain and hormonal issues. So now your body isn't just balancing hormones, it's also trying to sort through a myriad of mixed signals. Our hormonal overload is also connected to food in our culture. Let me paint a picture for a second. You wake up already tired. Maybe you reach for coffee, maybe with something sweet just to get going. Breakfast is quick, maybe something processed, maybe something sugary. You're busy, so you snack throughout the day. You're sitting more than moving. Or maybe it feels like you're running around everywhere, but you never really feel strong. Dinner happens late, and maybe that's the first time you actually slow down. And by the time the day ends, your body has never actually had a break. Now, compare that to traditional patterns: whole food, natural spacing between meals, way less sugar, and built in rhythm. Here's the connection: when we eat constantly, insulin stays elevated. And when insulin stays elevated, hormones get disrupted. When hormones are disrupted, cycles become painful, irregular, and imbalanced. And that's not random, that's cause and effect. Movement and strength also play an important role in our hormonal life. In our modern life, we've created a life where movement is optional. But for most of history, movement was life. Traditional women build strength daily through squatting, carrying, and walking. I mean, just think about it. If you think about biblical life, and if you've watched the popular TV show about Jesus's life on earth called The Chosen, you've seen how those women are walking to the well to get water for their daily needs. They have those big clay jars, sometimes the wood that goes over their shoulders to be able to carry a jar on each side, and they're walking for miles to get to the water. They're filling up those heavy jugs, and then they're carrying them all the way back home. And that was a part of a regular life. When you look at traditional cultures, their lives build bodies that are strong, stable, and flexible. Bodies that support pregnancy, birth, and recovery. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Yes, their life has a greater physical demand on them, but it also carries greater physical capacity that we just don't experience in our modern day. And when you step back and really look at modern life, it actually starts to make sense. Because we're not just dealing with one small shift, we're living in an entirely different environment than our bodies were originally created for. Our soil is depleted. The nutrients that used to be in our food simply aren't there in the same way anymore. And that same soil, it's often sprayed with chemicals that don't just stay in the ground. They make their way into our food, into our bodies, and into the delicate balance of our microbiome and hormones. Then we look at our food itself. So much of what we eat is no longer real food. It's ultra processed, stripped of its natural nutrients, altered to sit on a shelf for months or even years. And many of the ingredients added back in, well, they didn't come from the earth, they often come from a lab. Then there's our water. What should be one of the most life giving things we consume is often filled with things like chlorine, fluoride, and even microplastics. And on top of that, so much of what we eat and touch is wrapped in plastic, materials that were designed to be durable, but also release chemicals that interfere with our hormone balance. So when we look at all of this together, it's no longer confusing why we're suffering as women. It's actually very clear. No wonder we're struggling. Not because our bodies are weak, not because being a woman is inherently broken, but because our bodies are navigating an environment they were never designed to handle. And when you see it that way, something shifts, not into fear, but into understanding. because now you're not guessing anymore. You're seeing the bigger picture. So let's bring this all together. When you look at multiple populations, multiple environments, multiple consistent patterns, this is not just being a woman. Let me say that plainly. What we are experiencing today is not simply normal womanhood. This is the result of how we are living. And don't get me wrong, I am thankful for our modern conveniences. I'm thankful that we have a washer and dryer and that I don't have to go down to the river to scrub my clothes. I'm thankful for running water, but also much of the modernization that has come into our world has also disrupted the original way that our bodies were designed to eat, move, live, and breathe and have our being. Yes, we live in a fallen world. And yes, sin brought pain into the human experience. But we also serve a God of order, a God of design, a God who created the body with intention and not confusion. And I don't believe God designed women to live in constant hormonal chaos. I believe we've confused what came from the fall with what has come from modern living. So, in light of this truth, we can take another look at our bodies. What if our painful periods aren't just something to endure, but something our bodies are trying to communicate? What if our hormones aren't broken, but burdened? And what if Eve isn't the reason you're struggling the way you are? Because God didn't just create your body, He designed it to function well. So many Christian women have quietly accepted this is just hormones. This is just life after kids. This is just part of being a woman. But what if that's not the full story? And what if God's heart for women is not survival, but restoration? When you begin to shift this narrative in your mind, everything changes. You stop believing that pain is just part of being a woman. You stop assuming your body is working against you. And you stop settling for symptoms that were never meant to define you. And instead, you begin to see your health as something you can steward. Because here's the truth, we can't completely escape modernization. We're not meant to go live in the wilderness or abandon our lives, but we can begin to live differently within it. We can choose to nourish our bodies with real life giving food, to be mindful of what we're putting in and on our bodies, to move in ways that build strength and support the way we were designed, and to create rhythms that give our bodies space to function well. Not all at once. It's not going to be an overnight transformation, but step by step, we can move toward becoming more of who God has created us to be. And when we do that, we're not chasing perfection, we're moving closer to God's design. Because I truly believe this, God is not calling women to survive in their bodies. He's calling us into something better, into strength, into clarity, into vitality, into wholeness, into health that reflects the way He originally created us to live. And that doesn't mean everything becomes easy, but it does mean this: you don't have to settle. You don't have to accept constant pain as your normal. You don't have to believe that struggle is your only story, because your body is capable of a more. And as you begin to steward your health through the food you eat, the water you drink, the way you move, the way you care for your body, you are not just improving your health, you are honoring God's design. And that is a powerful place to live from. Mama, my prayer is that today's episode reminded you that your health matters to God and that caring for your body is part of living out who He created you to be. When we place our hope in Him and lean into His design for women's health, we don't just feel better. We stop guessing, stop striving, and begin moving forward with confidence and purpose. We're not chasing perfection here. We're learning how to live well with wisdom and grace in the bodies God gave us. And as you grow in that understanding, you grow in confidence to live in the fullness of who you were created to be. If this conversation left you feeling encouraged and supported in your health, I'd love for you to leave a rating and review. We're not talking about health the way the world does, and your voice helps build this mission of empowering women to steward their health with faith, confidence, and truth. Make sure you're subscribed so we can keep walking this journey together. You're not in this alone. And keep going, mama. Every small step you take today is leading you toward the healthier, more vibrant life God created you for. I'm cheering you on.